Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Chris Tuttle. I'm one of the pastors here, and it is really wonderful. And Marita, our wonderful Director of Christian Education, is making sure we're well hydrated. Thank you very much. A couple of quick things before we begin. As you all have noticed and are sharing in, as Durham is mask optional, so are we inside here on campus. So whatever decision you make, if you choose to wear a mask or if you don't choose to wear a mask, that is a great choice. And we are wonderful. It is wonderful to do all these things together. This is a part of a larger series that we call Aperture, which happens the third Wednesday evenings at around this time. It's been online. This is the first one kind of fully back in person since pandemic, which is a great way to kick things off. Sometimes we're here, sometimes we're up in the music room, sometimes we're on Zoom in all sorts of places. But next month, I want to make sure to mention next month we're going to have a gentleman named Rich Gwaltney, who's the community engagement representative for Transitions Life Care. And he's going to be talking about ways you tend to your family. So whether you or somebody in your family are dealing with a chronic condition or just want to think about how to have better and richer conversations about these things of meaning and what about life matters. He'll be a really important contributor to that conversation. So I hope you'll come back at that point and join us. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time introducing Kim and Penn because you all are here because you know them already. And they're probably sick of people reciting bios about them. I would just say that it has been lots of fun the last couple days hearing stories. And as the Amazing Race went on, I was telling Penn, people who've been around this church for a long time, their hearts just swelled with pride. Just swelled with pride. All sorts of. Barb Schmidt, as she was leaving today, was like, I think I remember him camping out in our backyard.
Yes.
See? And she said, I won't tell you any more about that. And
you shouldn't know any more about that.
No. But all those things will continue to float around for as much of the evening as is possible. But we're really grateful for the time and energy in a time that probably keeps getting busier and busier for you all. But this place cares a lot for both of you. And feels as if you're still part of the family. And we're grateful for your presence here and for your contribution with this book. And so what we're going to do tonight is I've got a couple of questions just to begin the conversation, and I'm just going to toss them out, and they'll bat them around for a little bit, and we'll keep going for whatever feels right. Maybe 40, 45 minutes, maybe more, maybe less, probably not anymore. And then certainly by 7:45, there'll be a chance for questions that come from you all, whether anything you've read or prompted by the conversation tonight for you to jump into. And then we'll do that, and we'll have a pretty hard stop. You can't have a pretty hard stop. You have a hard stop. We'll have a maybe at 8:15, and we'll wrap things up. And then we'll gather in the corner and begin telling stories about camping in Barb Schmidt's backyard.
I cannot wait to hear these stories.
So, to be all these things. So to begin, what made you all decide to step into book territory? And tell us about some of what the process was like. I was reading this going like, I'm really grateful, and they kind of had to relive some of their best and worst moments of their marriage as they were writing this, and it made me interested in what that process was like as y'all were putting this together.
Thank you for the nice introduction. It is so great to see Westminster Presbyterian Church again. We were here for Paul Ransford's memorial not too long ago, and this place wasn't quite open yet, and it is stunning and beautiful. I am just going to really quickly say that I used to hide in the choir loft storage in that corner over there where they kept all the folding chairs, and the organ and the choir were on top, and I can see it still. It was
Why were
right
you
over
hiding?
Because I was here all the time.
So you didn't want to go to church?
No, I had nothing. This was like on a Wednesday afternoon. I had nothing to do, and I just went. This was my second home. My dad was here, and my mom was, at the museum, and I just piddled around and found nooks and crannies. But what has happened to this place is spectacular. So that was not the answer to your question. We started writing the book because we got in fights, and we realized after a few years of being married that if we talked openly about our fights with somebody who was a licensed professional, that the fights got easier to get through. And that person is one of Chris's good friends, Christopher Edmonston, who is the pastor at our church.
And I think we needed the book, the book writing process came very organically because it's a book we needed. I think marriage books, when you looked at them in Barnes and Noble, were very serious and like it was a marriage in crisis.
And the covers were always
Very
like someone
serious.
looking out a window.
The broken
There's
heart.
something
Yes.
shattered in the back.
Fractured, healing wounds.
And we were
or
never
something. Yeah.
shattered.
Yeah.
Like we always had a good marriage, but my parents divorced. And as happens with more than 50% of marriages, and they went on to remarry, and they married wonderful people, and they're very happy now. But I knew that we weren't shattered, but I also knew that we needed to get help before things got too bad. Like you go to a tennis coach to work on your, what's the tennis word? Backswing, is that a thing?
Backhand.
Backhand?
Yep.
You work on that? Yep. I don't know. So like you go to a coach, you go to a coach to help get through those things before it gets terrible. And none of those books related to people who had a good marriage, but just wanted a really, really high functioning, great one. So that's why we kind of started down that path. And because we have a podcast, we have we were writing about it already. And so somebody approached us, and it's actually a dear friend of Penn's who we went to college with, like, you should write a book on this. And we hadn't really thought about it. We also knew that we weren't going to put ourselves on the line as professionals because we're passengers on this flight. We still screw up. We still get into fights. So we wanted to bring in somebody who knew more than we did because I could not be on the hook for screwing up your marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was Christopher. And the first, this is going to sound really familiar to anyone who's gone to counseling. As the stubborn guy that doesn't want to admit that everything isn't perfect, I was very reticent when we first started talking. I thought there would be finger pointing. To be perfectly honest, I was worried that it was my fault all along, and I didn't really want to figure that out. Just be honest. And Christopher was not that type of person. I hope every counselor is like him. I think I've learned that many of them are. It's not a finger-pointing situation. It's a situation where you both learn more about the person that you're with and how to communicate with them. And these little kind of actionable items, these sort of magical words that you can say to de-escalate a fight, keep it from starting, whatever it is, he gave us all these nuggets, and it was so easy, right? It was so much easier than you thought if you just did the work and got started. And so that seemed like good material for a book, maybe.
I think, like, in hindsight, we would have renamed it. Like, we could have a postmortem. We would have renamed it just in Magic Words of Marriage because we just went into him, like, just tell me what to say. And honestly, we use this stuff with our kids, with our now, like, 12 and 15-year-old. We use these same words with our kids, like, tell me more. And
I hear you.
I hear you. And just, like, we use all of those lessons in parenting. We use them in work calls. We use them all the time. So I would have renamed it, but then that's like part of the publisher thing. So, but I would always just ask him. I'm like, just tell me exactly what to say. Just tell me what to say. And so that's why in there's like scripts and like things to say because I just needed. That's like the Enneagram 1 in me. I just like wanted to be perfect all the time.
I was about to out you as a 1, and I don't know how many of you guys know Enneagrams, but that's become sort of a new part of our journey since we published the book.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you. So from the end of the book, you're talking about a couple, somebody you know who's been married 20 years and seemed to have a great relationship, and you overheard them, maybe it was a rehearsal dinner or something, say something about how the secret of their relationship was to treat each other with the same respect they treat a stranger. And that little nugget struck me, and I wanted to hear y'all kind of tell us that story and share a little more about that.
That, I remember one of the disagreements we got into, and this is before we heard that advice. It was kind of early on in our marriage, and I know it's shocking to you, but I was in a very bad mood. And one night, and I was just like, I didn't want to go be out. I just didn't, and then somebody I was an acquaintance with came up, and I was like, oh, hi, so good to see you. And I was doing this act, and Penn's like, you were way nicer to that guy who you kind of knew and met with just once than you were to me the entire night. I was like, busted.
I think I said it more rudely, though.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't kind, but also I wasn't being very kind to you.
No, you started it, but then I had the opportunity to also treat her like a stranger, and I didn't. We say this in the book all the time. You know exactly how to hurt your partner.
Don't do it.
Just don't do it. Like, you know how. You may not know that you know how, but you definitely know how. And so I remember that night, too. We were supposed to go to the Snoop Dogg concert.
Okay, that's
And
another
I know
thing.
that's not sure.
another thing.
He's great. So at any rate, yeah, I remember saying instead of saying
esteemed theologian Snoop Dogg.
right,
Yeah.
exactly, he is.
Yes.
Instead of using all the language that we had been working on in the book, and the book hadn't been finished yet, I think I said, "What is your deal? You're being really snippy and terrible right now, and you're not being, and you're being really nice to that other person, and that's not the way to solve it." But thank you for pointing that out.
I will also say that we do in practice treat strangers way nicer than the people we love the most. We save, and I think even at some point it was told to me by a child psychologist that your kids are going to save the worst for you, and that means they feel safe with you. We would pick our daughter up from preschool, and she'd be kicking and screaming, and our teacher would say, "Oh, but she's so great with us. But she felt safe with us. She had held it together for so long." So she gets in the car with us and she melts down. I'm like, "Oh, she feels safe. That's why she's being terrible." But we do the same thing with our partners, right? That we just save the worst for the people we love the most. And sometimes we have to put on the smiley face and just realize that's really not fair. I mean, sometimes he gets the worst of me, but also he deserves the best of me too. And that's the work of the relationship that I didn't realize when we said I do that we would be doing. That sometimes it takes work to be get it together, Kim, and give the best to him, because that's what he deserves. Sometimes, most of the times.
Say sometimes.
Sometimes.
The important part, it just makes me think, we all these commitments in our lives, for whatever reason, whenever we get into them, we all think it's going to be easy. And we expect if we're in love the right way, then that's going to magically solve all the things.
Easy.
And I think we realize, my wife's a Presbyterian minister as well, and when we do premarital counseling with couples, part of it's just realizing when people said things to us when we were younger about it's going to be hard later, you go shut up, thanks for the advice. And then you get older and you go, yeah, it's probably true, but I couldn't hear it at the time.
Right.
And thinking about what's the right photo album for the premarital counseling and every couple of months something will happen in our lives and we'll add that one. It's the first spousal stomach bug, where you gain a level of intimacy you have not had
And
previously.
you're sharing a bathroom
Right,
during
and then,
that.
when stuff like that, but you're
nowhere to hide.
actually, this is what those vows mean.
Yeah.
It's about
Better or
these
for
things.
worse. This is the for worse.
Right,
Yeah.
right. This is all the things. Yeah.
It's so funny you just mentioned kind of what people say at the very beginning. My dad, when he was the pastor here in that office, he would have anyone whose wedding he was going to perform come in and have a counsel with him. I'm not sure if you do that as well. And he made us take a Myers-Briggs.
So
Yeah,
he married us.
He
So
left
we had to
mountains
do.
of Myers-Briggs notebooks in the
Oh, that's
office.
great. Do you still have
There was
them?
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
that
he
are
was
all
really
over the
into it,
place.
and it was interesting.
But let's just put this out there. Your future father-in-law
Oh,
doing
yeah,
pre-marriage
yeah.
counseling. I just walked in. I was like, "This is not Haywood. This is not fair. I'm not doing this." I walked in with the worst attitude.
He was great, though.
He was great. He was great.
The one thing I'll remember him saying, he's like, "You guys line up pretty well on this test, so congratulations." And I think he was happy about that. The other thing that he said was, "You guys are going to be happy, but you're going to be walking on eggshells for a long time because of what your test scores say." And I don't know that we took that to heart. And we still walked on eggshells, which meant that we weren't telling each other what we want. We were doing what we thought the other person wanted us to do to continue whatever that early bond is for a relationship that's full of dopamine and, sex and everything else that just happens early on. And we weren't talking about what we actually wanted or needed. And that's one of the biggest parts of the book, is saying that mature people ask for what they want. And maybe if we'd listened to my dad when he said that at the very beginning, we could have gotten to it a little bit earlier.
But I was not busy listening. I was still salty about my future father-in-law.
Yes, I know it was weird.
No. It was great. Actually, no, he's the one, we did the Myers-Briggs, and he's like, "You're an introvert." I'm like, "I am not an introvert. I'm a news reporter. I talk to people all day long." He's like, "No, but you're an introvert. It says it here." I'm like, "That test is wrong. I'm an introvert."
Which, again, as an Enneagram 1, you question everything
I
that you are.
know,
So this
but
is all
he's-
lining up perfectly
He's
now.
the
So,
first
yeah.
person to tell me that I was an introvert. He's like, "You get your energy from being alone." I was like, "Doesn't everybody get your energy? Don't you get energy from sitting on the couch?" He goes, "No, he gets his energy from being with people." So I'm like, but I love people. So he was the first person in that office to say, you're an introvert and this is going to be an issue. So that was actually very helpful. He did good. He did good job.
Yeah.
But we also don't know things till we know them, right?
Right.
I mean, I think all of our lives are filled with things that people said to us before, but it's about, part of the way I read y'all's book is in every marriage has its kind of phases of life and things, right? And we have to adjust, and we become different people.
Right.
And if we expect to relate to our spouse the exact same way that we did when we were 23 when we met, and have the same patterns and do the same things and talk to each other the same way, and assume the same things matter in the same way to that person, then we're going to lose a lot of things. But how do we do enough of our own work and enough work with each other to tend to wait a minute, something's changing in me. Is it in you? Mm-hmm. And as you kind of keep going through, when all life happens, and then when things get really hard, you've got a framework built.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to
Something
say
happens.
that.
Yeah. So those of us, this is perfect since you just mentioned Haywood. Those of us who know and love your parents were particularly attuned to the moments that you talked about caregiving and about their health in the last couple of years, which we know is not an easy place right now.
Yeah.
Right? And you've been quite honest about sharing with them and us about that. But talk a little more, not necessarily asking you to talk about those situations in particular, but about the toll caregiving takes on individuals and on relationships, and maybe how, because we're all swimming through this stuff, right? And how does that affect the relationship, and how did y'all handle it well and poorly, and how do we think about that?
We did the best we could. So you get to a point, I'm sorry, just in case you guys don't know. So my dad, who is the pastor here, he has dementia. My mom, who was just as integral in this church, has Alzheimer's. They have both been in skilled nursing for about 4 years now, and 18 months of it was in full lockdown COVID. And so the decline gets a lot worse when that happens. But they're close to me. They're in a safe place. I don't know how he did. He saved up so much money, and was able to it's not cheap doing
y'all.
this whole thing. Yeah. So they've got a little bit of runway to be there. You every time you get a phone call from a certain exchange, you're like, is this the big one? And so that's the reality that we live in now. To answer your question about the things that we did wrong, because there's plenty of them, before getting, again, guidance from a Presbyterian minister, which I'll get to in a second, you get angry at your father or your mother when they're acting irrationally, and you think that it's about you, and you take it personally. It's a lot like the things that happen in the book. You think, well, what did I do wrong? Why are you being so snippy? Why are you being so mobile? Why aren't you making any sense right now? And it took Art Ross, another pastor who you know really well, to explain to me and to Kim that when you get to a certain point in life, your brain deteriorates so that you're a child in that sort of rational thinking. So you have to treat them with the same love as a child, but also the same firmness, which doesn't make any sense when the person who was your main authority figure for your entire life, you have to flip the script on that. So I got that wrong for a while. Kim, I don't think you got anything wrong. You've been a rock, and you've been supportive, and you've been, she's also, I married the world's greatest empath. She knows what I'm feeling when I don't know what I'm feeling. And so I'm like, I'm fine. She grabbed my knee. I'm like, wait, I'm not fine. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we're still going to mess some stuff up. I think I wish that my parents had the same research and science that we have now that shows you that you can avoid dementia and Alzheimer's with better lifestyle choices.
Not avoid, but maybe delay.
Delay it.
Maybe
It can make a difference. But nobody had that. This is all pretty recent stuff.
But they were ready because of their genetics, and I would say the biggest toll on our relationship was, and this is we talked about secret contracts. So in our marriage and in every relationship you have, there's a secret contract, a role you play in any relationship. It's work, it's parenting, or your marriage. He takes the kids to school, and it works, right? So it's our secret contract. I make dinner. I just do it. It's things you just do and assume, and when they work great, they work great. So he is, as a shock to no one, like the happy golden retriever in our marriage. And so he's the happy one all the time. And so he comes in with jazz hands. And so
literally. Sometimes. Have you seen our videos? Like literally walking in with jazz hands.
So very serious stuff happened in rapid succession with both of his parents. And it's heartbreaking. It's terrible. And I can zoom out and break down and cry as we're packing up the house he was brought home from the hospital in, and going through all this stuff. And I can feel all these things. He's like, "It's great. What are we having for dinner?" Like, he cannot feel. So he was still playing that role as the happy person. And so we had to have the talk of, like, you can release this. Like, you can let me, like, I can carry you for a minute. And so he finally, I think, allowed himself to feel it. Like, it sucks. It sucks caregiving. And it's a hard road to navigate. And even, we're working with transitions, and we're learning all this stuff now and having these really hard conversations. And it's just, it sucks. And I think as a caregiver, it's great because he has the support of his brother and sister-in-law who's been wonderful. To go through it alone, I think would be impossible. But his parents were and are such amazing people, and even where they're together and they're in the same place, and even they're everybody's favorite in the nursing home or in the skilled nursing center. Like, on Mary's birthday, she still gets the sash and the tiara, and not everybody gets the sash and tiara on their birthday. So she's everybody's favorite.
Also, they were like, until very recently, they were still super like inappropriately flirty with each other.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that this is clear. Like, that part was adorable.
Yeah.
And not great for me, but everybody else seemed to think that it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Part of what you're talking about in that dynamic, I think, is part of it's knowing kind of when to tag each other out, and when each of us have our default mode or secret code or however you say it, and to know, like, hey, you don't have to be that guy today.
You don't have to be that
you
guy
don't,
right
You don't
now.
have to play whatever role we're all playing, whether we do it intentionally or not. And then when to go, like, wait a minute, you carried me for this season. Maybe my thing's not done, but I'm going to carry you for a little bit. And how do you be in conversation enough to go, like, all right, you don't.
And then we
You don't have
literally
this.
say the words, we're like, secret contract, you're out.
Right.
Like, I got this. And like, we have to say, and he's like, okay, got it. Okay, I can feel this for a second.
If you haven't read the book, secret contracts are all of these deals that you make without actually making them. Like, I'm usually the one who gets up and takes the kids to school. You're usually the ones who bring them home. You make most dinners unless there's a disaster. I try to do as many dishes as I can. Like, there's if there's homework, that's usually my job. If there's,
I got the lucky end, y'all. I don't have to do homework or drive them to school.
But you do everything else. You do literally everything.
I would
else.
rather do everything else than
So,
those two things.
but we never. Right, that's true.
But that's what I'm saying. But those things
But
work.
that's
Those
But they
are
work.
healthy secret contracts until they stop working. And at that point, you have to say as a couple, hang on. Like, I don't know that I need to be the all-time golden retriever, right? Or
Yeah, and it didn't work
Yeah.
because it wasn't allowing him time to process this. And also for me, I'm like, I need you to acknowledge that this is a big deal. Like, that I'm not, like, this is a big deal to be doing all this stuff. So, yeah.
And for you, like, of all the things that she did, the one thing that really made her snap was the secret contract that she replaced every roll of toilet paper in the entire house and had for her entire life, to the point that I didn't know where the extra toilet paper was. And none of the kids knew where the toilet paper was. To the point that if I ran out of toilet paper, she went on strike. I started using the Kleenex on the counter.
For 7 days.
The Kleenex.
Nobody replaced the toilet paper in the down. There's like this
And by nobody, you mean him.
And our
Well,
children are
right.
disgusting
But
too.
I kept using, they didn't use the bathroom that I used that much, so this was mostly on me. But then we ran out of the Kleenex, or no, she took it away.
I took it. I found his stash and I took it away.
And I had to waddle into the kitchen where the paper towel was because I didn't know where anything else was.
Aren't you glad
so
you
I'm
came
like
out
doing
tonight?
this, like literally over to the.
We needed you to stand up and demonstrate.
You couldn't
that.
imagine
That
it.
was actually that was the
Aren't
critical
you glad
part.
you came out in the rain for
And
that?
it's funny because I think I was baptized right here.
Yeah.
Like in this exact place, right? Wasn't this where the altar used to be? And then I just did that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Something your dad would think that was awesome.
He would be fine with it.
Actually,
Yeah, he would be
Yeah.
fine with it, I'm sure.
But it makes, I mean, part of me thinks that might be an interesting exercise for those of you who are here with a partner this evening, like in the car ride on the way home, like what's the secret contract? Like what's in there?
And some of them really work. Like some of them really work, but when they don't, they really, really don't. Yeah.
And when do you need to swap? Like I remember right after our first child, our daughter who's 16 was born, like we had a pretty steady rhythm. Carrie made dinner, I did the dishes.
Right.
Like,
Perfect.
we did that.
Sure.
And so, but not long after, she'd make dinner and I'd start doing the dishes and she went, you're going to take that baby away from me. For a little
Yeah. She'd
This
been
is-
over.
And I was like, but
Yeah.
you do the dish. And she was like, no. And then, but it was a good moment of like,
Boy,
we
yeah.
have to, all right.
Alter it.
And
Yeah.
so after this, now I'm going to check. Do you want to take the baby away from you? Or do you want, like, what do we, and how do you, because these swaps happen whenever major life changes happen, and sometimes when they don't, and you got to be able to have a communication
Mature people
framework
ask
there.
for what they
Yeah.
want.
Well, I really wish we had our counseling before we had an infant. I think that's, like, you guys probably
These things
handle that better
place
than we
pressure
did.
on relationships.
Yeah, and they build.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're here. We've moved towards this, and we'll do that. So we're here at church, right? We're
This
here
used
at
to be
church.
the church.
The church. Yep.
This was the church.
The literal
Yes.
sanctuary
Yep.
before that one. You all are clear. I imagine publishers are not necessarily looking for more faith-based marriage books, and that was not the lane y'all are looking for, but y'all are clear about your faith in other areas in the book. So talk to us who've gathered here in a church, like what role? I mean, obviously when things got tough, you had a relationship with a pastor that you could go to, but what role does your faith play in how you sort out these things?
Do you mean faith like religion or faith like Mark Twain? Like faith is believing in what you know ain't so. Like the actual word?
Both
or
of the things.
Okay.
Take it wherever you want to take it.
Well, the first one, which is just believing in stuff that has no empirical evidence whatsoever, whether it's religion or anything else. As a couple, my wife is kind of a superstar at this. She is amazing at just taking risks based on her faith in me. And our faith in each other. It's how we started the business that we started. It's how I quit my job. It's how we eventually got to make our own schedule and be around our kids more and grow a company and do all of those things, right? So we talk about leaps of faith all the time. As far as the religious side of it, and I'm going to admit right now that I have, COVID has tampered my church attendance. But other than maybe like, just because Dad put it on the bulletin, I don't know if it's still there, like every week, Micah 6:8, like that's a good one. And I think I saw a sign for it on the way in here. So I think it's, what's that?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, there it is. There's Micah 6:8. Sorry. There it is. Yep.
We should put it up somewhere.
Well, that's like a paraphrased version of it. That's really cool that you still do that. And that's good advice too. But I mean, just to keep it really simple, the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The rule of the old prophets. That is something that is in the middle of every single chapter of the book and of everything that we've ever done. In the midst that I married an empath who knows how to do this naturally, and she helped walk with me and teach me how to see things from someone else's perspective rather than living in what all of my college friends called my own Penn-centric universe, which was a term that somebody coined. You can be like the fun, happy-go-lucky guy and not have good empathy, which I had for a very long time. And so thanks in part, I think, largely to you who knew how to do this already. Every single thing that we talk about in that book is, and everything that Christopher has taught us, is about seeing things from the other person's perspective and understanding what they're going through. And that's the beginning of any conversation that you have. That's why you say, I hear you. And tell me more, like wanting to learn more about that person. And talking about secret contracts and understanding what the other person is going through. And that's just like, that's at the center of everything that I learned. I mean, let's be honest, 99% of my religious understanding is from my mom and dad, because they were here. I was here all the time. And everything that they ever talked about was about being accepting and understanding and figuring out other people's perspectives, which isn't always what you hear when you hear about religion, but it was in the religion that I was raised on.
Yeah, like I think we were both raised with a similar Jesus. Like our Jesus loved everybody. Our Jesus was very accepting. Our Jesus treated other people like, he wanted to be treated. So I think we bonded over that. I grew up, my mom is remarried to our pastor, so we both grew up in like weird preacher kid, so I think we bonded over growing up inside of a church, and I had places to hide as well. So that was the bond of our initial like meeting. And then I think that is just so ingrained in us that is a foundation of our marriage that we don't even really speak about as much because it's just there. But these are words that, our family lives by, and they're not on our wall. Maybe they should be. But that's just like how we are.
I love that. If you believe that the image of God is planted within every other person, it's almost back to the treat a stranger kind of thing. Like because it's so easy to take for granted with the people who are close to us. And and it's also easy to talk about being accepting and open kind of in theory. With people
and that's
who are
where
far
like
away
the I'm doing the best I
when they're
can
close
came
to you.
out of. Like you see these t-shirts, but it's like our family motto. And that's like, but it's a faith that I believe you are bringing me your best. And some days my best is like, I can't get out from under the covers. And you're just going to have to trust that like my best right now is I'm having a panic attack and I'm just going to stay here. But you have to have, it's a faith that most people that you encounter on this world, on this earth, are doing the very best they can with what they've been given. And that actually, it came up because of his parents, and like Christopher had to kind of shake us by the shoulders. He's like, they are doing the best they can with what they have. I'm like, he's like, do you have faith in that? I'm like, I do. And it shifted it really shifted how we treat each other in our marriage, how we treat our kids, how we treat strangers, is like, I have to believe you were bringing me your best. And our best isn't always great, but it is our best on a given day.
This is going to sound, actually, it's not going to sound shocking to you guys. You guys are at Westminster. It's going to sound shocking to some Christians out there, but I learned about being accepting here from a pulpit. My dad gave a sermon in 1995 about gays in the clergy, where 30 people walked out of the church. I don't know if any of you guys were there that day. Were you there? The church got stronger after that day, right? Yeah. I look back, like I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. We cleaned out his place to get him into skilled nursing, and we found it, and we read it, and we're like, holy cow, he wrote this in 1995. So being accepting and understanding was implanted from here. And you were raised similarly.
Yeah, no, that's how I was raised, and but religion it's been getting tricky. I know that's not the question you asked, but it's been getting a little tricky lately, and church is getting really tricky lately. Yeah. But that's not that's why I would say like that's not my Jesus. Like my Jesus doesn't do that, and that's how we're raising our family.
Right. I love that. Yeah, it's just. Yeah, if Jesus is at work in the lives of all of us, and God forbid a whole lot of people way beyond here, maybe who won't even come into a church, then that ought to inform everything we do and every decision we make and who we are as a church. Our public policy decisions is about a way that we move towards others. And there's something fundamental about that is really, really important and astoundingly easy to forget. Because life gets busy and we get hard and things get hard and we're not our best.
And it's easy. It's really easy to assume the worst in strangers and your partner. Like it's easy to assume that like he left his crap on the floor next to the hamper just to make me mad. But really, he was busy because he was taking the kids somewhere and he was doing all that. He was doing all that stuff and he threw it down. So I'm like, he's doing the best he can. It over here one more time.
Yeah.
So,
It does.
For that best to be a little better.
Like, it really sounds like I'm an idiot.
you said it.
When I can't, because it's right, because I do. I put it just right next to it, not all the way
next
in
to it. And his excuse is he may wear it later. So it's like, and the
I think I
kind of
stopped using
clean,
that a
like
while
he's
ago.
like, I may wear those jeans again, so I didn't want to put them in the dirty. So this is like I may re-wear it, but I've already worn it section.
It's a stewardship issue.
Yeah.
It's a stewardship
There
issue.
it is. Yep, it's a stewardship
Yeah.
issue.
It's a stewardship issue.
Yeah.
It's an executive functioning issue, which many of us have with this lovely.
But it's not really
Yeah.
dirty.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put it right here. Okay.
But it's about communication and about intent. Like I'm in a marriage code thing that Carrie and I had to work. Like I'm a on time equals respect. Like if you were late,
Yes.
it means that you disrespect something fundamentally about me or the task we're engaged in.
Yes.
But also, some people like my wife are actually just really present where they are. And it is not occurring, she's not thinking about it because she met someone in the Target parking lot and they're exchanging life stories.
And she's, yes.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I need to honor that, but I'm like, I need to do a thing. And
I
you know,
know.
and you spin off somewhere else.
No, you
And
are
she comes
me.
back and she's like, I met this amazing woman.
Oh my
and I'm
gosh, my
furious.
life has changed.
And nothing, and you're like,
No.
we are doing fundamentally
If I'm not
different
5
stuff.
minutes early, I start panicking. And he we had a meeting today at 10:30, and it was like it just turned 10:30 on the thing. I was like, it's 10:30 and he's not here yet. But then he popped up on Zoom and he was right on time. Stressed me out.
You'd be a good football coach
What?
because they always get mad if you're 1 minute late. You got to run laps.
I would have made you
You're
run
like-
laps
yeah,
today
you're- yeah,
because
you're-
it turned 10:30 and I didn't see
Yeah.
your little face and I was like, yeah.
What else from the book or from anything else you want to share with us before we open it up for
Oh
questions?
my God, I kind of want to hear from you guys. We had fun writing the book. If any of you have not read it and you're like me and you're a dude and you thought, I don't need this, just think of a car that you take in for a tune-up every 3,000 miles, and you
I think it's like 5,000 now. The good
Sorry,
cars.
5,000 miles.
Yeah.
You take good care of it. You shine it up, and there's nothing really wrong with it. But you take it in for a tune-up just to make sure it's okay. The fact that we don't have that basic maintenance on our marriage as a society, is shocking. We should have a sticker on our forehead after 5,000 miles, so we go and we check in with each other.
Yeah, yearly maintenance.
Yeah.
And how many fights would be avoided, or at least be done in a more productive manner if we were slightly more proactive in terms of how we're tending to all this stuff?
I mean, more importantly, it's the buildup, right? Yeah. It's the ones that just you don't ever address. It's the stonewalling and the not addressing of issues. And if you take a second and say, hey, what's going on? It's a lot more painful if you do it every 5,000 miles instead of when the engine breaks down. I should be a car mechanic.
You should see,
I'm terrible with
please,
cars. No,
if
I'm
we're
off.
fun, I'm going to
Yeah.
send you guys a picture of how many lights are on in his dashboard.
Oh, we can
Driving
do that.
here.
Yeah.
I was like,
I think it's fine, right?
There's 5 different lights. He's like, it's fine. The dealerships do that just to get you. And I'm like, no. I feel like there's a good reason. They're all flashing. But
It's the car that we drove here today.
I know. Anyways, we're on the highway stuck in traffic. I was like, that
It's
is
still driving. If
awful
it's still
great.
driving, then it can't be that
Right?
bad, I imagine.
I mean,
We did write most of the book pre-COVID, and then we had, I think, 3 or 4 chapters still due, and then we went, it was February 2020, and we went on The Amazing Race. And then we did 2 weeks on The Amazing Race, and then the world shut down. So we came back having learned a little bit about that experience, but then also we came back and had to finish the last 3 or 4 chapters in new COVID, that new panic mode, which is an entirely different framework. But a lot of the lessons still, because we had, and I think we handled quarantine well and COVID well and being isolated well because we had this. And there were so many marriages that were put under the spotlight because they were together in that intense way for the very first time. And we had a lot of practice because we had been working together and raising kids. We had been doing that work already. So I have to say, high five, we were ahead of the game on that because we came out it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
We had a great time.
I'm
Still married.
still married.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thank y'all. Let's open it up for questions, and I'll ask you, to maybe stand up and tell us who you are, and then if you have one, and I'll repeat it back for the room, so I'm not taking the microphone off.
And the first question is always the hard one. Just know that we're going to give you a huge round of applause and say that's an awesome
That
question.
is an awesome
no matter
question.
who it is.
This is a
So
very
whoever-
supportive
And I can't guarantee
environment.
that for the second person. So the first person.
And
is
it
going to
doesn't
get
have to be
special
about the
treatment.
book because let's face it, now everybody's read it and it's totally fine.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah!
Yeah!
All right.
All
Thank you.
I'm Amy. And I guess my question is, how did you decide to go to your pastor versus like a third party that neither of you knew?
Great question.
Great. Amy's question, if I could,
Yes,
maybe
please.
you're going
Yeah,
to,
go for it.
how did you decide to go to your pastor versus a therapist or a clinician of some other form?
I will take this. I am a big fan of therapy. Like, everybody should get therapy. It should be like as adults, you should all get therapy. As children, we should all, like, everybody get therapy. So I've been doing therapy since college, in and out and meeting with strangers, with great success. Because Penn had never gone to a therapy situation. I think I approached it, I was like, this is kind of like a starter situation. And it was somebody, he actually felt more comfortable, I hope I'm not speaking for you, but he felt more comfortable talking to somebody we knew. And that worked for him. And for me, I was like, and because we were not in crisis, but we wanted to be better. I felt like that was a great entree, and it worked. I mean,
You're 100% right. It also just happened that Christopher did a marriage workshop that we attended when really, literally nothing was wrong.
I was like, they're doing it at the church. Let's see.
Right,
and so
and that was a little bit of a toe in the water thing. And I think every pastor has things that they specialize in, and his just happens to be that. So that was really helpful too. But I think the more accurate answer is he was a friend. And I'm telling you guys, there is just that sort of, there's fear. There's real fear that you're walking into something and you're going to like realize, oh, crap, I've been doing this wrong for 10 years. And the worst fear is I've been doing this wrong for every guy. The worst real fear, when you get to the very bottom of it, is she's going to leave me. She's going to, awesome. Like, I want to be stuck with you. Mm-hmm. I really do. But that is, I don't think any guy is going to say it out loud, but every guy, when they say we should go to counseling, that's the first thing that crosses their mind, and they never say it out loud.
And I will say, as somebody who's gone to lots of different therapy, try on, especially if you're doing it in a partnership, like try it on, because it's not always the first one does not always click. And I know that just from like my individual therapy, like, and I've now, I'm 45, almost 46, and I finally found my individual therapy person who I love and adore, and it's taken me a long time. So like, keep trying them on, almost like you're dating somebody, because it's not always a direct, but it worked, yeah. And I have to say, like, no offense, and I'm sure you do a great job.
No.
I actually have heard of some nightmare stories coming out of church.
Yeah.
So Christopher happens to specialize in marriage care,
right.
But I've heard of some nightmare situations coming out of church counseling. But this was actually really great. So.
Yeah, I was going to say I was going to chime in and say there is a really careful line there that I think, and Christopher happens to know more than many pastors about
Right.
these
It's like his
things.
specialty. Like,
But most pastors that are worth having any of these conversations with have a real clear sense of what their limits are.
Right.
And when I'm meeting with couples beforehand and all that kind of stuff, I'm going like, look, we're doing some basic stuff. I can fake a good conversation, but there are people who study this and specialize in this, and those are the pros that you go to for this particular issue, and having a sense of the way different kinds of care providers can work in concert together. I think it's an important part of everybody's kind of assessment process.
And I think so I'm very suspect of pastors who say, like, I'm the person you come to and nobody else. So, and so I think, like, I would run screaming if that was a situation. Yeah.
Right. Good, thanks.
Great job, Annie.
Annie started it off.
Annie!
Great job. It was a great start. It was a great start. This is good. We can applaud after every.
Yes,
Yay!
so I love that.
Hi, I'm Julianette. I watched the whole Amazing Race and was just so excited that you guys won.
Thank you.
Like, listening to you makes me feel like this was your secret weapon. Like, you were able to navigate those challenges, and this gave you the strength to get through them and ultimately win. I'm just curious, like, what happened behind the scenes that we didn't see? That fall apart, and like, how did the other couples see that this was your real strength?
We have joked that marriage counseling was like everybody else was in the gym, we were in marriage counseling, and that's like what helped us. That was like the secret, 100%.
I don't even think it's a secret weapon. I think,
Yeah.
but I mean, we just knew how to de-escalate. It's a huge part of the book. We knew how to like pick the right time to say something.
Yeah, and it's not to say we didn't. I mean, there one time, and it's so funny they didn't really. I questioned. I'm like, because we knew how it ended, obviously, but I'm like, I wonder if they're even going to show us. We were so boring. Like we didn't fight because everybody come there like, oh my gosh, like Kaylin would call the girls who came in second. They actually did fight a lot more than they showed, and they're like, oh my god. I'm like, we are so boring. But the only time we did get snippy, we were in Greece, and the directions were like, go straight. And you're like, when do I turn? I'm like, I don't know. It just says go straight. And you're like, well, you have to tell me what I'm doing. I'm like, I don't know. And you're like, Jesus is going to take the wheel. And right now, Jesus is Kim. And like, that, I'm like, okay, we've gone Jesus. I'm like, we're not doing this right now. But, so
I thought that was a pretty good line.
But I'm like, we're not doing this right now because it's not a real fight. You know, and so we get snippy. We're like, this is not real. It's a game show. And so we could get really like tied up in it, but we're not doing this now. And then we would get back to the hotel. We're like, we're on a game show. This is not a real, actual, like life thing that we need to take back and work out.
You did say, let's not do this now. I remember that.
Yeah, like,
and
we're not doing this.
that was it. We were done. We just figured we were going to talk about it later. And by the time it was time, we didn't. I will say that the top 5 people in the race were the 5 people who communicated the best with each other.
Yeah.
They were the ones like it's not a race; it's a relationship show. It's how are you going to get the most out of your partner, and how is your partner going to bring the best out of you? That's how you can look back for 33 seasons. It's almost always how it ends.
Yeah. And I think we knew that going in, just like being fans of the show, that the people who got along best typically won. And we also knew, like, we were older, so we knew that there was more important things at home. So, like, our perspective, we could always zoom out and be like, we're lost, but I mean, like, let's enjoy it a little bit. So, but it was a bucket list situation, and what they didn't show is I was a freaked out, nervous mess most of the time, like before the race, which is like the morning of, before it all started. I really missed the kids because you can't even talk to the kids. So like that really weighed on me too. So by the end, I was just a zombie. So there's a lot of those little things we didn't get into.
We should applaud.
Yeah, Well, good question. Yes.
Everybody gets applause.
That's part of what we're doing. This is part of what we're doing. Culture of encouragement.
Yeah.
Who else?
It. Okay, let's go. Let's hear it.
Hey, Liz.
I'm Lizzie and Stephen. It's really enjoyable, so thank you so much for coming. But can you talk a little more about, you talked about your faith in Penn and taking risks. So like, changing your career as a friend and business is a big risk.
Yeah.
Doing that together is so like sort of how you talk a little about how you approach that conversation when you was like,
I was the one who was more scared.
I in typical, like, normal life, Monday through Friday, am more risk averse and very, I like to show up places 5 minutes early, and I'm very, like, on anxieties. I'm walking with it all the time. So it's very uncharacteristically me for him to say, you have this weird news anchor job, you don't ever see your kids, you should quit. And at that point, I had started a business with a friend, and we were doing video production. I'm like, you could... we had 2 months in savings. Like, with 2 kids, that's not a lot. And I'm like, I feel like you could quit your job and we can just make this work. And I just it was one of those, I wasn't nervous about it at all. I was so excited. I just knew it was going to work out. And that is not who I am as a person. I'm usually a little sky is falling, but I just knew it would be okay. And a really smart person gave me a piece of advice one time, like, smart, hardworking people will always have a job. Like, some smart people are really lazy, and some hardworking people are not that smart, but smart, hardworking people will always have a job. And I'm like, we're going to figure this out. And it was a huge risk. He was game. He was a little more nervous. It took a little while because I was the one who with the benefits.
Like
he had benefits,
yeah.
and he had a great job, and it was paying for our lifestyle. And I was like, it'll be fine. It's very unlike me. So there was a certain amount of faith I just had.
When I finally put in my notice, by the way, like I think the kids was probably the biggest tipping point, just because the local news is a disaster. You never see them. You're a zombie when you see them, and the hours are crazy. But I put in my notice that we were going to start this business, and it was 90 days before I left, so we had plenty of time to figure out how we were going to mess up our next chapter in life. And I had to meet her at a restaurant out by North Hills, which is in Raleigh. There was like a concert or something going on, and I got there, and the kids were already there, and they had made a poster, like what they make for people who come home from the airport, that said, "We're proud of you, Dad," and I lost it. It was that kind of, that's the true meaning of faith. It's not only believing that something's going to be okay, but supporting the person who's making that jump with you. And she did an amazing job of that.
And I also know we were incredibly lucky. Yes, we worked hard for it, and we had no business plan for it. I knew we had a couple of clients that could tide us over, and I knew how much our mortgage was, and the car payments, and nursery school, and all that stuff. And so, on paper, and I knew his parents were like, "What are you doing? What are you like?" And he's like, "Do you sure you don't need money?"
I was never able to explain it to them.
Yeah.
Still don't. Yeah.
So if I got that call from one of my children one day, I'd be like, ooh, but I don't know. It is the most sure of anything I've ever been in my entire life, because I knew it wasn't, what we were doing there was not working. He worked 3 to midnight, and our daughter went to school from 9 to 3. So he'd never, Monday through Friday didn't really see her. I mean, he'd wake up with her, but he didn't really see her. So I'm like, this is not working. We need another option. So.
Did we just get all schmoopy, or did we answer your question? I'm hoping that, okay. Yeah, I don't, thank you.
That was so sweet.
It's one of my favorites.
That was the best.
So I'm Sarah. I'm listening to your book as opposed to reading it. And
Yeah.
So I've listened to a lot of books, and I was surprised when you all kind of added to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's a lot more in the Audible version of the
So
book.
I'm wondering, when you read it for the audio recording, did you learn anything new, or kind of discover something deeper? Or
Great question.
Yeah, so
It is different.
We a lot of it is the main kind of magic words part we wrote together. Here's how we're going to do this. But I sometimes zone out when reading things with my ADHD. So a lot of your stuff,
He just didn't read.
I wasn't paying as much attention to it as I was when we did the Audible version. And it was a great, that was kind of a...
He's like, that was really good, babe.
Babe, that is genius.
I'm
He's
like, it is printed.
The name is,
and
your name is on the book. How do you
delivered
not
to
know
people
this?
already, and you haven't read it? He's like, no, I read it,
I
but
read all
just...
my parts.
He's
Yeah,
like, I read
the
it.
stuff that we
so
did
the
together.
process of writing the book
Yeah.
with a partner is very hard, because he writes a section, I write a section. Christopher would kind of read the sections and kind of do his little thing at the end, kind of like a wrap up.
He added some great research as well.
So, and then an editor comes through and takes the alphabet soup and makes it shiny and pretty. But really, he didn't have to read my section to make this book.
I mean, I did.
He
saying
did.
I didn't, a lot of times the letters just turn into puppies and
He's
stuff.
like,
And you
"Babe,
just keep going.
That was so good.
Well, it was.
It was.
Yeah.
Thanks,
The
hon.
more you talk, the better the answer gets.
Yeah,
It keeps working.
Does anyone have another question they want to ask about the book?
No, but the audio recording was super fun
We loved
because
it.
we went kind of off the rails, and we just kept it light, and we would read and then talk, and then he'd sing, and so that was a lot of fun.
Great.
Hi, I'm Jenny. You had mentioned just tonight that you've gotten recently into the Enneagram, and I was curious, you said year 1, Kim, what Penn is, how that has changed how you communicate, understanding that about each other.
We need to know
If I could,
more.
can I say that
Yes,
for
yes,
that?
yes,
So
of
we
course.
can hear it.
Sure.
So this is about, and maybe if you give give us a little primer on what the Enneagram is,
Yeah,
and then talk about how that's affected the way y'all.
We are not
communicate.
experts.
An Enneagram is actually a shape made of 3 concentric triangles that have 9 points to them. And the Enneagram is basically a different version of well, it's
It's like
similar to the Myers-Briggs, but it's more about where your
It's
motivation
like an ancient,
is.
like personality profiling. We are not experts.
Right. We've had a guy named Ian Michael Cron on the podcast a couple of times who is an expert.
He has great books about this
Yes.
if you're interested. Ian Morgan Cron.
Right. And
Yeah.
what he taught me, and he taught each of us this thing, he taught me that as a 4? 7?
Seven.
7 is a 7?
4-wing, 7
As
is
a
a sword.
7,
I don't know the words.
As
yeah.
a 7, I'm like a golden retriever, like she said, and a lot of times I'm so pain averse, I don't take enough time to sit in a moment and let it wash over me, which is like, you know, when I go and visit my parents, like that's something he's like, you got to sit with them for a little bit longer and not just be like, oh, see you later, and just like let that kind of happen, and that has been life-changing for me over the last 3 months or so. And then he taught you
Well,
that
I am not in total agreement, but it says that I'm
which is part of her Enneagram.
the Enneagram 1 is like the perfectionist, and I don't think I'm a perfectionist.
They all reject that they're ones.
And so he's
this is
trying
why
to.
this is so funny.
Yeah.
But he's trying. But
Every piece is so debatable.
I
That's
was
what the beauty
so
of the thing.
deeply
Yeah.
offended because I'm not a perfectionist, but the improver is what that is. So I honestly.
You're trying to improve your own
Everything.
diagnosis of yourself that you got by filling it out yourself.
Yes. But I have to say it was very eye-opening because we are learning, just like the Myers-Briggs, you know, where like the Enneagram 1 is at the best of times and at the worst of times. And it's crazy how accurate it is. And so I have to say I actually just finished his book, but I'm still like not an expert enough, but I definitely recommend him.
Yeah. I have a request. I need a dude to ask a question.
Dudes.
You guys are all here. You're here with your wives. You have
Their
questions.
wives made him come.
Yes.
Yeah,
I need
he's
a dude
nodding
to
back
stand
there.
up and ask a question. I'm not going to answer another girl's question. You guys
let's not do that.
Well,
That's a lot of
like they've
pressure.
done great, but there's been none of the dudes have asked.
But the
questions
dudes were
yet.
drunk here.
I gave him the whole oil speech.
I know, but honey, that's just not. That's
not gonna
how
happen, is
works.
it?
Yeah, too much
All right,
pressure.
we'll go back
now.
to the ladies. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Great question. That is
Elsa's
fair.
asking why did they want to be on The Amazing Race?
So the show's been on for 20 years, and so I have always watched it and loved it. And it was kind of on this bucket list of like, it was just kind of in the back of the mind. It's just a bucket list, and we had the opportunity. We got called. We still had to apply and do all that stuff, but it's just one of those things that I had always wanted to try, and now we tried it. Yeah, that is not a really great answer. Do you have a better answer?
Yeah. They did reach out to us. This particular season was, I guess they wanted people who had done something of note. And we were the only ones who were not like on Oprah for what we did. Like everyone else.
Or Ellen.
There were like
yeah.
the train heroes from France, and the guy who was in prison for 11 or 10 years, and the guy who started a nationwide initiative for underprivileged schools to have a lights-on program with laundry, and then we were just, we make
Jazz hands.
Yeah, we're jazz hands. They told us that it was going to be something kind of like that, and it was kind of a special cast, so we were curious a little bit, but logistically, we never did it before because we have kids. You have to leave, you have to give them your phone, you can't talk to anybody for a month. You cannot talk to anyone. You cannot, which by the way, great for your relationship. Get rid of your phones, get rid of your computers, no TVs, and just focus on each other for 30 days.
That was actually great.
We came back a stronger couple,
Yeah.
100%.
Like the distraction of every day. I have to tell you, that was
my favorite part of the race.
Like when we got
Yeah.
our phones back, I was like, oh, I don't
Right.
want to turn this on.
But all these reasons were reasons that we wouldn't have wanted to do it before. And our kids, our daughter, who at the time was 13 when they reached out to us.
12.
12?
It's been
12 maybe. She's like, what are you going to remember? Like some random February or the time you go on The Amazing Race. We're like, but hey, we're going to be gone for lunch. She's like, we'll be fine. Your mom can go. They basically pushed us out the door to audition, which was really quite the sacrifice if you think about it for someone being without their parents for a month.
Yeah.
Yes!
Yes!
Thank you!
All
Let's
right,
go!
Tim. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
So speaking of your kids and your
or did they like roll their eyes?
Great question.
Yeah.
You have a lot of good questions here tonight. I think it's so strange and that kids these days, being a YouTuber is a job they want. It's like a job they put on it. Like if you go to a high school like career fair on the application, like kids want to work on the internet. So I think our kids want a separation. So if you notice, most of the videos it's us, right? But even today, we came here from our daughter's track meet, and she's like, just sit up kind of high. Like she doesn't love it when people come up to us and want to take pictures, and she doesn't love that, so she'll never be in that picture, but she's very proud and knows that like this might be what she does with her life. So I think it's given them, and our son, he has like a YouTube gaming channel. I mean, there's no comments on, and it's tied to art, but like that's people make a gross amount of money playing video games on the internet, you guys. Yeah. So they have so many friends that like every day he's like, my friend wants to know if you can give him a shout out on Instagram. I'm like, no, we don't do that. So they think it's cool, but if they had to be involved in what we did every single day, they would cringe, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, they're thinking like, I walk around with my phone and me and 3 friends do something and then I'm set for life.
Right.
That's the lane they see, right?
Right.
Yeah. Has that changed a little bit and as your kids have gotten older?
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm watching, and part of this is me projecting, like when my kids were little and I know they weren't listening or not capable of listening to stuff in worship, maybe I'd talk about them a little bit or drop a story.
No,
but as they get older, no, but like.
That's why we'll never do a parenting
and how you
book.
involve them in the process and stuff like that. Has that
Yeah.
shifted as they've gotten older?
Absolutely. They have been the children of internet people for 8 years now, which is a longer time than most. Like the shelf life for a YouTuber is usually about 2 or 3 years, and then it kind of moves on. We're blessed to still have this as a full-time job. I think they're old enough now to respect, holy cow, these guys work their butts off.
Yeah.
Like they see us working really hard. That's the most important thing that we can show them, that we're not like eating Cheetos on a couch and watching, playing video games and getting 8 million
Although
views
those
for
video
it.
game people work very hard.
They make tons of money. I will say also that we're very aware and try to give them as much space to like us or not like us as they want to have. And they're in social circles of their own. So if their friends make fun of them about it, they're going to come home and not be happy that we do it. But if their friends are like, "Oh, your parents are pretty cool," that helps as well. And we're aware of all these things. The only thing that we can have any control over is showing them that we're trying to make an honest living, and we're trying to do it out of showing the positive side of our lives and using joy and love as like a vehicle for what we do. I think in the end, right now, if like a 0 is them being the most embarrassed of us and 10 is them being the most proud, like they're pretty close to 10 right now. And I know it's not going to last, but that's pretty cool at this particular moment.
Yeah. I mean, but again, we don't use them we don't say like, oh, parenting sucks and bag on them all. Like that's just not the type of content we do.
Right.
And we'll never write a parenting book because then we'd have to expose some like crazy stories about parenting.
Unless like PC really wanted to do the thing about the coat. Like when how he doesn't put a coat on.
Oh, but if you see our son in videos, those are his idea.
Yeah.
So if we're like embarrassing him, it's like his idea. But again, like he wants to be, like that's like a job he wants to have. So
and that's one of those where like, if they're engaged and coming up with ideas and doing stuff, I imagine you're like, I'm going to figure out how to make this work.
Yeah.
100%.
Because I want to reinforce this behavior in any way, and I'll make all sorts of compromises somewhere else to reinforce the behavior and do something.
Yeah.
It's also just a chance to be with them and
Yeah,
like
just
to
hang
work
out
on
with them.
something, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Great job, Tim.
Great
Well done.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
We're on
Oh,
a
no,
roll.
no, hold on, no. We got over here.
Oh,
She's-
sorry.
I got
Oh, no,
excited.
no. No, go. We got a dude.
But we've got,
Another dude.
Yeah, that's why I was
All right,
excited.
go Will, and then I'll come to you next. Great.
Mine's Will. So while we're talking about your kids, did they, I guess, first of all, with the therapy that you went through, did you notice that affected your parenting? And then did they notice any changes?
So Will's question, sorry for the is did your kids notice changes in you, and how much was parenting a part of your therapy ish?
We have used a lot of these tactics in the way that we talk to our children and the way that we ask them to talk to other people. Tell me more. I hear you. Like the magic words work in any relationship. It doesn't have to be a married relationship. And so we've used those actionably. One of the interesting parts that we wrote about in the book, and this was Kim's brainchild. I don't think this was from any counsel or anything. Kim didn't want us to hide the fact that we were fighting from our kids. She wanted us to complete the fight in front of them and reconcile it in front of them at a pretty early age.
Well, my parents, I mean, they're divorced, but they got into these like knockdown dragouts, like behind closed doors, but you hear everything, right? And then the next day they'd be fine. I'm like, wait a second, we skipped a step. How did we get to here? But we also fight very respectfully, and we're not like yelling and screaming and cussing at each other. So if we have a disagreement, we will have it in front of them, and then they will see it. Even if it takes to the next day to resolve it, we will say, hey, remember Dad and I were arguing about this thing. This is how we resolved it. And I think that they have trust in that in a way that I didn't as a child. Like I didn't have trust that my parents were going to get back together after, they separated and got back together many times. But so I hope they see modeled that like, yes, you can disagree and you can hold your own and you can ask for what you want and you can still love each other at the end of the day. So I hope that they carry that into their relationships or future relationships. I know they are with their friendships because they expect a lot out of their friendships and they demand respect out of their friendships, but they also are good friends. They are very good friends right now.
Answer.
No, but they are, and I think and I hope it's because we've set those boundaries. Like they demand, if they have a friend, Lola has a friend that is, I think, trying on a new high school personality, and she's saying some weird things and maybe criticizing people's, bodies. And Lola's like, no, we don't do that. You can be my friend, but you can't talk to me like that. And we can be friends, we can get over this, but you can't do that. I'm like, I don't know if I would have done that in ninth grade. Like, I don't know if I would have been that bold. And I hope it's because we use that sort of language here.
Thank you.
Really
You had a question
Yes.
over here before you said?
There we go.
I'm Shelley.
Hi, Shelley.
Hey, I want to say thanks first. My daughter's 16, and we spent the lead up to the Amazing Race, and then every Wednesday of the Amazing Race bonding.
Aww.
Or me too. Yep. We were so excited when you.
Oh, let's not bring it up. Yes.
For those of you,
Code word. I'm going to do
she did
this.
this.
Yeah. I did a bungee jump.
She jumped off a perfectly good.
I was freaking out.
Yeah.
Ken, we were screaming at the TV when you were holding the clue in your hand for like 10 minutes.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah. Yeah.
But the whole time, it was just such a great bonding experience with my daughter, and I wanted you guys to know, we admire your relationship with Lola.
Aw.
And we watched like the ways that she's growing up and the ways your kids are, and when you get your little makeup tutorials,
Oh.
like my daughter and I love them. And so the whole time, I just want you to know like the impact. We were on the last show. I don't think we could have gotten much closer to TV. I almost threw up. I better scream, the coin!
It's the coin!
Okay, so just as, take it for what it is. But what I wanted to know is, you said you don't think you would do this, but would you do it with, like, Lola? Like, if they did a show where it was like dad and daughter, or
We've talked about, like, because...
She was asking if you would do it with Lola.
Me?
Yeah. I'm just making.
No. No. I'm sorry, no. Are you new here? I'm Kim. Nice to meet you. No, so...
Those are great questions.
Those are great,
by the way.
great question. Oh, so
Thank you for all of that.
Tonight. Thank you. And it's so sweet to hear that. And yes, and the makeup videos are always Lola's ideas, so I get so excited because I'm like, well, she wants to spend time with me. And so I'm like...
or the music where you listen?
Oh, yeah, no, like all of those things. And so we love, like when Lola has time for us because she's in sports and she's doing homework and we don't see her.
The problem with you and Lola is that you guys, and this is why I love both of you so much, is you are very similar.
We're too similar.
And you have to be a little bit different from the person that you do that with.
To go on the Amazing Race,
Yeah.
like as a partner. So I think Penn and Lola would go back and win it. And she's honestly many times would have done better than I would because she is so strong, she's so fast, she's so talented. I will never do that again. I want to work for the Amazing Race. Like I want to go be a producer. and go like do the challenges and practice them and go to the country like 3 weeks beforehand and do all the research for it. Like I want to do that part of it, but I have too much anxiety. I need to know where I'm going. I want to map. I want to make GPS.
The lack of control. So I will say that you see a lot of it on the race. Like, oh, we don't know where we're going. That extends into hours and days of downtime. That if you have anxiety or ADHD, it's really challenging.
Like we didn't know where we were. Like they would fly us to a country and then you'd land at an airport and you would this town in Greece, but then they'd drive you an hour and a different. I'm like, I don't even know where I am. Which direction are my kids? Like I don't even know which. Yeah. So there was a lot of anxiety. So no, that's a no for me.
That does make me think about, just to tag on to that a little bit, like the way you mentioned this in each of the last couple of answers, like the way you're thinking about what you're producing, whether you're on a show or videos, like how you're tending to your relationship, but also how you're not trying to be somebody else, but you're also being intentional about the way you're modeling what you think a healthy relationship should be like.
I don't know how much we think about. I don't know how much we think about what we're modeling in terms of our relationship. Especially like we didn't think about it, but I'm glad that they highlighted that.
I'm glad they highlighted everything they did. This was a cool season. Like they talked about mental health issues that they don't normally talk about. They showed the photographers for the first time in 33 seasons, which I thought was like the very end, which was, these guys were unbelievable. I'm basically just heroes to be able to come back and do it when they did. But yeah, I mean, I think we just prepared enough that we weren't going to act like idiots. Even though we still managed to act like idiots. For sure.
Good stuff. All right, there's time for one more. No pressure, it's going to be great.
It's going to be great. That
awesome.
last question's always the best one. Yes, do it.
Go, Will, thank you.
It's okay.
Oh, I have to say, though, so our book agent, who is like his very good best friend, obviously read the book beforehand, and then the long story is,
I know what you're doing.
so Bird read it, and so we introduced him to his wife. So she's my very good friend, so now they're married and have 3 kids, and he was also our literary agent. She called me so mad. She's like, he's been using all of this stuff on me. And I was like, she's like, I just thought he was super in tune, but he's just reading from your book. I was like, well, is that so bad? I know. She's like, I hear you all the time. No, I think that's the special sauce when you can both do it. And you both know it's authentic. Like if you're just saying it, like, tell me more. Like, that's hot garbage. But if you're both using it well and can take a deep breath, zoom out, and know, like, wait a second, what is this fight really about? Like, that's when the good stuff happens.
I think, but we've never been asked that question before, and I think maybe you could be allowed to say that's poor usage.
What do you mean?
Like, if you're saying tell me more as you're walking out the door, to like go to work or something.
Or like tell me more.
Yeah, like it doesn't. I guess the caveat is that magic words don't work if you don't mean it.
Yeah, you have to mean it.
We're all just staring at each other.
I was about to say, I think that's a great note to end on, actually.
It's a soft, hard stop. It's 8:16. How are we feeling about
this is our we're almost stopping at 8:15. So,
Yeah.
we are really grateful.
Thank you. Thank you guys.